I was just going to have a slurp of my coffee then. Good evening, everyone. How are we? We got through Monday. It's Monday. Yes, it's Monday. So I'm all wrapped up because it seems rather cold all of a sudden down here in Wiltshire, where it's been pouring with rain all day. So by popular request, we're going to talk about all things relating to school anxieties, particularly children struggling to get into school, but also maybe when they're there, the teachers not seeing, because actually the children aren't showing their anxieties in the way that you are seeing them. So I asked for questions, and these are the areas that we're going to cover. So many people were asking about how to get schools to come on board and see beyond behaviour to recognise anxiety and maybe trauma needs. Another thing was how, as a parent or a carer, to recognise if it's anxiety and to understand the child who seems to be coping with it by being very, very good in school. And then also this kind of grey area of, are they really anxious, or are they just, these are not my words, but trying it on. Then there was questions and discussions about sending children to school, pulling children out of school, homeschooling them. What do we do when, how do we make those kind of decisions? We've also got asking about children not showing their anxiety at school. So that's similar to a previous point, but being very anxious at home. How their children are having anxiety around reward systems. So that can be reward and consequence systems that children know are in place, and maybe they're never going to be the children that would do the stuff, but it's making them flipping anxious. Then just looking at strategies, really, how can we cope and support the children better? Sorry, I have an annoying piece of paper behind my back, which is irritating me. Okay, so let's start with the tricky, it's all tricky, this stuff, but the tricky issue of schools. Now, somebody did put an amazing post about how brilliant her child's school is and how helpful they've been. But in my many, many years of working in and with schools, I see a massive variability in this. And to be honest, and I haven't been doing training so much in schools this year at all because I decided not to. But on social media, what I'm seeing is a lot more punitive systems being put in place in schools. So this means your job of trying to support and help schools to understand and see your children's behaviour as anxiety is, honestly, it's tougher. It's definitely tougher, because with this more rigid mindset around, children just have to comply, and they know the rules and we put this in place and now they just need to step up, then that's not supporting you or your child. So all you can try and do, if I'm really honest, and I had to do this with my son because I couldn't get his senior school to understand his complex needs, was to put in the most support I could at home. So what can happen if you don't do that is that you can expend a lot of your emotional energy and your physical energy either railing at school, about school, what school is not doing, how they're failing your child. And you have every right to do this. You have every right to go to the governors. You have every right to make complaints. That is categorically what you can do. But I suppose the place that I've landed at these days is, how is that going to serve you? How is that going to serve you, your child? Yes, of course, try, but go in with with a compassionate desire to work with the school, because nowadays, probably more than ever, the teachers and the teaching staff, they have a lot less money to pay for resources, to pay for staff. They have big demands on producing results. And I'm not saying this to excuse behavior that isn't acceptable. All I'm trying to do is say to you, I don't want you to make yourself sick going into school trying to find the golden ticket that's going to win them over, because the chances are at the moment there is no golden ticket or magic wand or anything, because they are so stressed. When we're very stressed, we are not open to listening, exploring, learning, and even to compassion. So, do what you want with that. It's good sometimes to share research that you found. It's good to share posts that you found on social media. It's good to share videos and all these things, but doing it in the right energy and the right support. And I was wondering if this might be useful to you, because I'm sure not just my child, and this must be really tough for you. It can bring a better relationship and connection with school, and then they may be more open. Now, as I say, I'm sorry that's not magic wand stuff, but I'm just being really honest with you. So what I would say is, and I had to do this with my son, was concentrate more on how I was supporting him at home. And this is kind of our jobs as parents, to weather the storm of school. Because especially in the senior school, where I don't know, there was like maybe 1,300 pupils, and there were like numerous teachers. And even when I went to meetings and I begged and I did this, the right information did not always get out to, say, I don't know, the science teacher or something, who then did completely the wrong thing. But what I tried to focus on, I didn't do it perfectly, was to resource my child up, so that when these things happen, which were very hurtful and very upsetting, that he could bring himself back to some kind of state of being able to cope, and then would tell me, so that he could at least unload with me and we could process some of his feelings around it. And in the end, I kind of can't think of the word, coached him to always know that these things were not okay that were happening to him, but to kind of seek the path of least resistance. And I have to say, as a 28-year-old, he's using this very skillfully now at work, that he doesn't necessarily agree with things, and he doesn't sell his soul to the devil, but he manages situations, and he realizes that actually doing what I was saying in the beginning, building relationships, going in at a calmer, more compassionate level, actually often gets him what he needs, or what he needs to happen at work. So it's very much about what can we do at home to help the children feel safer on the inside, and then they can weather these storms better. Okay, so the next point was how to recognize if it's anxiety or if it's just your child trying it on. Well, to be honest, I always try to be honest. It's children, most children in the universe want to be with the other children. They really do. And most children as well, and when I'm saying children, I mean young people as well, they don't want to be the odd one out. They don't. It's not part of being a human being to exclude yourself from the tribe. So they have a desire to be in school. Also, what I know from having worked with children and young people for so many years is that they want to do well. They really do want to do well. They have dreams, they have aspirations. So trying it on, I would want to be curious about, so what is going on for you, my lovely? Because I I'm just not sure. I can't make out whether you're anxious today, you're feeling a bit sick, you're having a bit of a wobble. What do you need? And you know, in the moment where you're trying to rush out the door and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be late for work again and all the rest of it, that's easier said than done. And it may be that you can get them into school that day and you have these very, very compassionate conversations later, because something is not okay for them. Something is not right in their world. And at the moment, they would rather be at home than they would be at school. And I know with my son, I made the mistake often of thinking, oh, he's trying it on and he's pretending to be sick. Maybe sometimes he was, who knows? You know, as adults, some of us have pulled sickies sometimes, and because we're just fed up or we just want a day at home. So, I mean, why would a child not do that? So it's kind of not demonizing these behaviors and always being in that place of curiosity. So, you know, whether it's anxiety or not, you know, you can label it one way or the other, but it, in some way, your child is not feeling good about being away from you, being out of home and going into school. It's unlikely that it's just they can't be bothered, because again, like I said, you know, children, they pick up really early, you know, the if there is any excitement in school, the excitement of learning, they being with their friends, and they kind of just want to fit in and do what everyone else is doing, as much as any of us do. Like I said, we all have days we don't want to do stuff. So it's not going down that path in your mind. So much of this is about when you go down a certain rabbit hole about your child. Oh, I just know they're not going to go into school today. It's Monday morning. I know it's going to be terrible. Oh God, I'm dreading it. Now, understandable based on all the other Monday mornings, but already you're kind of creating that energy and that what's the word? Self-fulfilling prophecy. And self-fulfilling prophecy is just an energy that you create around something, and it's in you, it radiates out of you, your child connects with it, and history will definitely repeat. It's highly unlikely that history will do anything different. Whereas when we can work on grounding ourselves a bit more and catching ourselves, and when we start saying those things either in our heads or out loud, we catch ourselves and we change it into something else. You know, I trust and believe that this Monday we're just going to flow into school and it's going to be fine. Something a bit shorter maybe, but that kind of thing, it creates a totally different energy around this. This is something that you and your child have got locked in. You're both understandably scared now. You're really scared that they're never going to go into school. You're really scared that they're maybe always going to be anxious. So your energy traps them in their energetic state, and then there's no room for them to move or to change. Whereas if you start really working and holding a belief, this is just a phase and I know my baby's going to get into school, something like that. You know, as I'm saying that, and it's not even a real thing, I could feel all the chemistry change in my body. I could feel a real sense of hopefulness. Now, this might sound like just batshit crazy stuff, but honestly, there's a massive science behind it. And it's one of the most fundamental things now that when I coach parents, that we really focus on this. What are the recurrent beliefs that you hold, the recurring thinking that you hold, and therefore the habits that you have? So you will start, you know, winding yourself up for this probably on Sunday evening, as is your child, and then, you know, we're just carrying on in the same way. Whereas if you start to operate in a different way, so don't be saying this to your child repeatedly, because that would be pretty stressful, I could imagine, for them, but be saying it to yourself, be grounding yourself often, then you start to break this energy cycle around all of this. Now, that's, you know, not the only magic wand, but it's a really, really, really important one. Somebody was also talking about how Schools might not recognize their child being very good as anxiety. Excuse me 1 minute. And that's particularly difficult because, yeah, most schools, children come onto the radar when they're doing things that they don't want them to do. So the fact that you had to manage an enormous meltdown situation last night and this morning, and then they go into school and all day long they're very good, so school sees none of this, that's probably like a double wound in the heart, because not only are you massively struggling yourself at home, but school just looks at you like you're crazy. And to be honest, if they're not having a problem with it, then the likelihood that they're going to be that interested in the fact that you are, again, they just don't have capacity. It's not that they don't care, but they don't have capacity. So once more, you can give away a lot of your frustration and your sadness and your need for them to recognize this. You can keep giving it away, but it won't necessarily change how school respond to it. Better to conserve that for yourself and really focus on, what can I do about this? Because all the time that we're looking outwards, you know, there may not be any solutions out there. But in you, the most important person in their lives, you can be a massive resource for your children. You are anyway. It's just resetting the way that you're showing up for them means they then get to reset the way they're showing up. So yes, the very good child, it's almost impossible to convince the school. Whenever I deliver training, I do always really highlight to schools that they need to look for the very smiley, well-behaved child. You can tell, because there's that certain tightness and energy around them. If you know what to look for, you can spot it in a child. But you know, in a class of 30 children and 3 of them are doing all sorts of things, the children who are very still and very quiet and very good, I would imagine you're just absolutely delighted about, and you're not going to see it as anxiety. That's for sure. You're right. So then people were discussing options about, well, do I send my child? Don't I send my child? Do I homeschool my child? This isn't something I can tell you what to do or not to do. It wouldn't be right for me to. I can say that if I had my life over again, I had a strong urge to homeschool my son when he was little, because following the breakup of my marriage to his dad, so he was about 3.5 when I split from his father and we moved away to another part of the country. Then he went to preschool, which he did not want to go into, because I was studying at college to try and pull us out of the mess we were in. Then when he went to school, he really, really did not want to go into school because he didn't want to leave me. So his anxiety came from a very real situation, which was one major person in his life had disappeared. He was too young to understand parents splitting up and divorces and stuff like that. And however he did or didn't feel about his dad, his childlike deep down fear then was that I was going to disappear. So of course it made real sense that come hell or high water, he wasn't going to let go of my leg in the mornings to go into school. And this went on for years, not with him clinging onto my leg, but I know that he never wanted to be away from me. And I know that he was always worrying, would I be there? Would he get to come back to me? So in that context, it really made sense. So what I would urge you to do is to compassionately sit with yourself and try and unpick what has happened to your child, what has happened to them. Because anxiety about school, well, anxiety full stop relates to safety. So by that I mean internal emotional safety. And when we or a child is overthinking all the time, is having, a lot of physical symptoms, heart racing, breathing, not being able to focus, always being wired, always being on high alert. I mean, those are classic signs of not feeling emotionally and or physically safe. So in my experience of working with children who've struggled to get into school, it's and I'm not saying this is true of you, I'm just saying please be curious. It has always related to either worries about home, about people being safe at home while they're away from them. Some children are so anxious that every time they're away from us, they spend their whole time thinking something terrible is going to happen to us. And they only feel safe and that we are safe when they're right next to us. I mean, some of you will experience that at home. You have a shadow. You literally have a shadow. Some of you may still have your children. They may still be trying to sleep in your bed or sleeping in your bed. And that will relate to something that has happened in their history. And, it wouldn't be right for me to go into all the things here. But it could even be something like when they were born, maybe, that they had to be in the special care unit. And depending on how long ago that was, you may not have had much physical interaction with them, not because you didn't flipping want it, but because people didn't realize then it's vital for you to have as much skin to skin and as much, interaction with the baby as possible. And then maybe when you got them home, you were understandably in such a state of shock. And sometimes even people are experiencing post-traumatic stress from birthing, but nobody seems to realize that. And that could be the person who watched the birth as well as the person who actually went through it. So those kind of big situations and disconnections can mean that we don't cope terribly well when we get home. Surprise, surprise. And nobody realizes that because they're just like, oh, but you're home now and the baby's okay. And, it's all just swept under the carpet. But it can even start somewhere there. There was a separation, there was a disconnection in the process afterwards where you're trying to recover from the massive shock you've had. You're maybe not able to be, and I heavily underline the word able, as emotionally connected with your child as you absolutely want to be, dreamt of being, and all the rest of it. I mean, when my son was born, I was just in complete shock for about 10 days. I was just so shocked by the whole thing. So those little disconnections, they can have a cumulative effect. So it might mean that for some reason at this point in their lives, going into school feels like a big disconnection from you again. So it triggers exactly how they felt when they were that tiny baby. Now, you may or may not be able to work that out, but I just invite you into that place of curiosity. Or I've had quite a few people lately contact me because I guess the children went back to school in the UK in September, saying things about big shaming experiences their children have had. Now, of course, in some schools this will never be a thing, and in other schools it definitely will. And the child has been really, called out by a teacher, maybe really spoken to in front of everybody, or the child, because they're children, made a mistake and then got really humiliated for it because they just didn't know, because they're children. And of course, if that happened to us at work and we experience that deep level of shame and having upset the person, our manager, we're trying to please our manager, we don't want to look like an idiot in front of everybody, then we probably wouldn't feel like going into work. And every time we tried to go into work, we'd probably get a really racing heart, we'd feel a bit sick, we'd get pretty hot. Given the chance, we'd stay at home and, sit under the duvet and watch daytime. No, I don't know about watching daytime TV, although you might see me on it, so there's a bonus. But you know what I mean? It's like there will be a context. It may seem like this has just come out of nowhere, but these sort of things never just come out of nowhere. So spend some time very compassionately exploring with yourself and being curious about what in my child's history could maybe have created this, just so that it doesn't seem so random for you. And another thing to mention at this point is something which I know I've put quite a few posts before, and people have actually been talking about on the threads today. is that children who are anxious, one of the most difficult things is to then be in a building with lots of noise, lots of movement, lots of smells, lots of visual things. Many of the classrooms are just plastered with stuff on the walls. There's nothing about school that isn't a sensory assault, quite frankly. And, you know, a child who's feeling really anxious, they might just about be managing at home because they have you and familiarity, but then they have to go into school and they experience that as just like being in a complete kind of, I don't know, mixture between a tornado or wind tunnel and the loudest, craziest supermarket you've ever been. And it just makes them feel really, really sick. So the only strategy they can come up with, because they're children and they don't know, they can't put any of this into words. It's very, very hard. It's hard for us as adults to recognize it as this and verbalize it. So the only thing they do in the end is try to withdraw from this overwhelming, scary place. So think about that as well in terms of sensory overwhelm and it just being a very triggering place to be. Okay, so yeah, so I've already talked about how sometimes children don't show anxiety at school. But of course, it's like a can of fizzy drink. Everything that's going on at school is causing them a big inside, and somehow, maybe, you know, because they're too scared to show how they're feeling, and somehow they're managing to keep the lid on the fizzy can. But of course, when they see you or their other safe person, it's like, psh, you know, we pulled the tab back and the whole thing explodes. So at home, as is the same with us, you know, we might just get through work and seem okay and get through the day, but when we get home, the real us will appear. So that will either be somebody who's very short-tempered, who's very busy all the time cleaning everything, who never sits or settles, or it might be someone who spends all their time on their phone or gets very snappy, or just completely withdraws into their own world. So how we are at home and how we are in public as adults is very, very different. And, you know, so it will be with the children sometimes as well, which again, if you're looking for school to validate what's going on for you, then maybe look elsewhere, because it's just going to make you more heartbroken. Anxiety around all the reward systems and consequences. So yeah, this is a big thing. And again, I hear and I see a lot of comments about when schools bring in, you can earn rewards and get treats, or get treats for the class, or get smiley stickers or whatever. But likewise, if you cross the line, whatever the line they decide is, and when it comes in, then you can get consequences. You can lose your break time, you can lose your golden time, you can, you know, in senior schools end in detention, all that kind of thing. So a bit like shoplifting, you know, if we are in a shop and there's lots of security people around, it sometimes well, it does me anyway, makes me feel like I'm accidentally going to shoplift, because I get stressed, you know, and I feel like I'm being watched. And then I get, you know, in fact, I don't know, but I used to get very, very worried about, where did I put that mascara? Because I mean, mascara you could easily just chuck in your bag. So it's the same for the children. It can make them really, really anxious about, what if I fail at this? Or what if I upset the teacher and then I end up on the sad cloud or in detention, or, you know, and that can preoccupy so much of their time that they can't really concentrate on school. So again, this comes back to what I'm going to talk about finally now, because it seems like most people have gone. So I'm going to talk about strategies. So the most important thing is not to make coffee before you do a Facebook Live, is to focus on you and how much you are creating calmness and teaching the children techniques at home. The thing with anxiety is it's not so much about talking and rationalizing and asking lots of questions and giving lots of suggestions, and because that can feel overwhelming. But what is a wonderful thing to do is to make a something plan with your child. Let your child lead this. So what did I put down? A regulation plan. They might have a much better word for that. So basically you're looking with them to create some simple things they can do at home, and then they've got that to take into school and on the way to school to do, that helps their body and therefore their brain feel calmer and safer. So if you can have little conversations with them about, when we're feeling anxious, so much of it is in our bodies, that if we settle our body down, then it's hard for our brain to go into that state of crisis, panic, and fear. It has to come in through the body. So some of you might know my Little Meerkat's Big Panic book. That gives a very handy model in there. Shows that the meerkat brain is the survival brain, which is joined on to the body, so that anything that you do with the body helps the panicky meerkat feel calmer, more settled, and safer. And that's what you're aiming for. So it's working out a simple, maybe 2 things you can do every morning when they wake up. And if they don't want to do it, so this is about the whole family. This isn't about, oh, you have anxiety about going into school, so we need to get some stuff in place for you, and we need to fix you. And this is actually, as a family, we all need to be a lot calmer, and then we'll all feel better. And then things like going into school, going into work will become easier for us all. If you make it too much about the child, it then feels like additional pressure. So you could start by sharing and saying, I've been thinking about ways to calm myself or calm my meerkat down. And I'm going to, every morning, and do it in a place and a time when the children can see it, I am going to da, 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 da. So choose one simple thing that you're going to do. You know, I'm going to, while I'm boiling my kettle, I'm going to put my hands on my head, I'm going to stretch my feet, and I'm going to, actually I'm going to rock slightly because my meerkat likes to be rocked. And I'm going to take a few breaths. And I'm going to help myself get off to a calmer start every day, because I know I can be a bit of a nightmare in the mornings. And then model maybe 2 things that you're going to do, and then you need to make sure that you do them. So by making a plan for yourself, putting it up somewhere, maybe if they're younger and they don't mind drawing pictures, they could maybe draw pictures of you to remind you to do your thing. And then they may join in, or they may create their own plan, or they might ask to, but at least it introduces the idea that these are things we can do. So putting our hand on our heart, our hand on our belly, and then breathing into the big space between our top hand and our lower hand. Something like that. Or there's a big pressure point in the middle of your palm. Holding that. This is something they can do in the car. They can even do walking down the road, as can you, of course. Holding the middle. So it's doing these things, particularly at the weekend, but making it fun, not a chore. And these have to be a part of everybody's daily life. So it's almost taking the focus off how do we get you into school, and say, actually, how are we just going to all live a calmer life? And move the focus over to that. Make it a whole family project, a whole family plan. But of course, it's going to have to be led by you. And if you have a partner, by your partner too. You know, if they will come on board and everybody has a couple of things, and then it's about you two leading the team. So you have to make a massive commitment to this, because in 25 years that I've been working with anxiety and studying what really makes a difference, you know, based on the research, based on the science, it is calming down our body system. We have an automatic, it's called the autonomic nervous system, that runs inside us. And it's always trying to protect us and keep us alive. And when that gets set in the wrong way, then it overreacts to everything in life. And by doing things that are body-based, and I would, you know, there's nothing wrong with maybe going to yoga classes and things, but even better to start doing just simple things at home, because the yoga class could be overwhelming. The other thing I do myself every day, and I always have some near me, is I use very powerful essential oils. And if, you know, I'm not pushing them, somebody had a big go at me on Twitter. They're like, oh, you're pushing. I don't push anything. I just tell you, what do I do every day? Every day, because I don't have children to get off to school, I do something called Qigong, which is about energy and grounding energy. I do some yoga. But the first thing I do the second I wake up is I smother myself in essential oils, because when we sleep, most of us sleep in a hyper fight flight state, and the children do too. Many children, their bodies don't have good association with sleep, so they don't wake up relaxed and fresh. They wake up meerkat, and you wake up meerkat, and already the energy for the morning is set. So I hope this has been helpful. I haven't waved any magic wands, because there are no magic wands, but it is about really stripping life out for yourselves, making it as simple as it can be, taking out any stuff that the children don't need to do, thinking about encouraging school to offer them a safe, quiet space and a safe, quiet person. So not loads and loads of interventions. Somebody very kindly shared all the things that school have put in place for their child, and I felt overwhelmed just reading it. If I was a child, I would receive that as a hell of a lot of pressure. So it's all about safety. So if school can offer a safe person and a safe space the child can freely go into in the mornings, and then we just move from there really slowly, and everybody slows down, because the more we're obviously getting scared and trying to get the children into school, the worse it will be. It's about holding a massive strong belief that I know my baby wants to be calm and get into school, something like that. And then stripping life out, keeping it as simple as possible, slowing yourself down is the most important step, and then going forward with baby steps. So I hope that's been helpful to you. Some of the questions were very complicated and I couldn't address them in this forum, but I hope there's some nuggets in there, and let's keep this discussion going. Let's share things that you are finding that are helpful. And the last thing I would say is, again, do this all in very tiny conversations, but explore with your child anything they are currently doing, healthy things that actually help them cope, because they might be jiggling their leg a lot. So say to them, oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so just slow that down under the desk. Try and slow it down and do it with a bit more purpose and a bit more pressure in your leg. And actually, instead of, because the fast moving of the leg is making the meerkat go woo inside, whereas the slow movement is actually a nice rhythm for the meerkat and it's more soothing. So be curious with them, and, you know, but don't say, oh, I can see you doing this, because that'll make them jump. But you know, they have resources they are using, or things would be even worse than they are, and so do you. Okay, so take care, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. And, you know, please share this video if you think it's going to be useful to anyone. Take care. Bye-bye.